Venus and star blessings. I just want to share some things that you can think about relative to this Venus retrograde cycle. So there's just a few things that I can add to what I've already spoken about. So I think I've done 2 videos already, but there's just one thing I want to say is that the more I dive deeper into Venus, the more she bestows upon me deeper understanding, deeper wisdom, deeper knowledge. And it's one of the most magnificent, spectacular learnings in my astrological toolbox. I've been going at this for about 3 years now. Not just I've always obviously worked with Venus, understood Venus, Venus retrograde, etc. The pentagram, but I've never had the I've never had the did you want to say hello, darling? I've never had the level of insight that I do now, and I'm just really blown away that the more I look into it, the more I understand, the more the more levels that unfold. Speaking of which, my classes start in August. Now, some of you have expressed interest and have emailed me, so thank you. And others may be still thinking about it or may not know about it. So send me an email. It is going to be a lot of classes, right? The classes will probably reach, I want to say maybe 2-3 year period, right? Ongoing. So I'm starting it as a 10-week block. Anyway, in those classes somewhere, I will teach the Venus star points again, and obviously with a lot more information, which may or may not be confusing for some. But one thing to understand is that if you really want to understand these Venus star points, the significance of them and how they really work, it's an ongoing learning process with the goddess. It's just never ending. There's academic journals, articles written from the world of academia about this cycle of Venus, right? Which is the cycle of Sun, Venus, and the Earth, right? Because that's what actually forms those Venus star points. It's not just Venus alone, it's Venus with the Sun and the alignment with the Earth. So it's 3 bodies involved. Anyway, it's a very rich, complex study that I'm just in awe of, and I'm just loving the deeper I go. So anyway, relative to today, here's what we can think about. So we're about to step into Venus stations retrograde, literally in 2 days' time. When she stations retrograde, it's on the 28th degree of Leo. That's a very important point, simply because that's when she starts her retrograde journey. That's when she, stops to change directions as it appears from our perspective on Earth. Now, we know when a planet stops to change direction, that's always been considered and understood as a pivotal time, a very significant time. Now, that could be relevant to any other planet for that matter, and especially when you're talking about secondary progressions. You can be born with Venus retrograde, for example, right? And at some stage in your life, it'll be that Venus will actually change directions by secondary progression. So she will station direct at some point in your life if you were born with her retrograde. And the other way around goes as well. That is that you may have been born with Venus direct, and at some point she may turn retrograde through your life via secondary progression. That's very, very important. If that happens, whichever way it goes, it's extremely important. So there's something extremely powerful when a planet stops to change direction. There's energetically, spiritually, symbolically, philosophically, astrologically, astronomically, there's so many levels where there's tremendous significance placed on that motion, let's say, and that change of direction. I mean, in evolutionary astrology, if a planet is retrograde, for example, if you're born with certain planets retrograde, which a lot of people are, you know, it implies that those planets are operating outside of the consensus sphere. They're operating differently, right, to the consensus reality. That's just another level, for instance. Now, I had some contact with Rumen the other day because I was looking at astroseek.com, where they have like magnificent material on the Venus cycles, the Venus star points, you know, Venus's journey, Venus's movement right through, you know, in detail, Venus's phases, you know, everything is there. It's like, I just love that website. It's fantastic. Free resource as well, like how, you know, what a gift that is. And of course, Venus rules gifts. Now, there's some sort of discrepancy there, and I don't want to get into that too much, but I was looking at it and I was seeing that AstroSeek shows that Venus will be visible on the, what was it? I think it was on the 17th of August. Now, her conjunction occurs with the sun when she's reborn as the morning star. That occurs on the 13th of August, right? So usually, in just about every case, actually, you know, when she forms a conjunction to the sun, she becomes invisible. Now, this invisibility and visibility of Venus is huge, and especially in Babylonian astrology. And also, if you work with the heliacal phases of planets, that is what shows you, you know, the invisibility and visibility of planets, which occurs with every planet, not just with Venus, well, relative to the ones that we can see with the naked eye, at least. So now I've been doing a webinar, one of Rumen's webinars on Venus, the Venus pentagram, Venus in Babylonian astrology. It's a 5-hour webinar. I'm almost through it, and it's been invaluable. You know, just the amount of stuff I've learned from that, which I'm going to incorporate into my own teachings when I get to that Venus star point section in my classes. And one of the things that's not really looked at or given much attention to is this phenomena of Venus's visibility and invisibility. Most people just don't even know that, not paying attention to it, don't know what it means, don't even know it's significant. There's many people that do, of course. Now, one thing I learned from Rumen is that there's times when Venus, and this is like, there's no logical, rational explanation for this, and it boggles the mind, but there are certain times when Venus is actually never invisible, believe it or not. Now, I was blown away by that fact. So this Venus star point occurring next month is actually visible in Melbourne. It's not, she won't be invisible, which is bizarre. It's totally bizarre, but it's a fact, an astronomical fact. Now, Rumen has a program that he's created called Placidus. It's a very comprehensive, complex program. A lot of it actually is very kind of technical, academic, and probably would be more useful for the purposes of research and things of that nature. But on the other hand, he has all this other content relative to astrology and predictive material and so forth, such as primary directions, things of that nature, as well as the Venus pentagram. But the way he builds the Venus pentagram into his program is very different to the way we would normally look at it, which is when we're looking at the Venus pentagram in our birth chart, let's say, what we are plotting is actually the Sun-Venus conjunctions. There's 5 of them, okay? But the main one is the head of the pentagram, which is your main Venus star point. And that usually is the one, not always, but usually in most cases, is the Sun-Venus conjunction that occurred before your birth. That's the head of the pentagram. Then there's 4 points remaining, which create, the 2 arms and the 2 legs. They are the 5 Venus star points on the pentagram, on the wheel, that rotate like this cosmic clock in the background, that have huge cycles. The way we follow it is we follow this sequence of a consecutive sequential sequence of Venus star points that change every 9 months. Morning star, evening star, morning star, evening star. That sequence never changes. So we have that smaller cycle, which is 9 months. Then we have a synodic cycle of Venus, which is from one retrograde to the other, which is 584 days, which is 1.6 years, which is 19 months, every 19 months. Then we have the 4-year period of that 8-year period. So we have an 8-year period, we have a 4-year period, we have a 19-month period, we have a 9-month period. And we can extend it even much further than that and go into 40-year cycles, and then, really grand, massive cycles, 251 years, which is very, very close to Pluto's cycle, 248 years. There's a cycle there of Venus that's over 1,000 years, So hence why the study of the pentagram, the Venus star points, Venus's invisibility and visibility, all of this is really very complex work. And I had a lady email me yesterday, and she said, look, I did your Venus webinar, Venus star point webinar, and I've got to say I didn't understand it. And I wasn't surprised at all. It's going to take a lot more than a 3 or 4 hour webinar to understand this work. I've been working at this for 3 years, and I'm still learning so much, literally every day. But I'm immersed in it. I'm looking at it. I'm studying it. I'm researching it. I'm looking at so many different aspects and just discovering more and more and more. However, everyone needs to start somewhere. If you're interested in this material, you've got to start somewhere. So anyway, for the purposes of today, at least, what I was thinking about was, as I was saying, there are times when Venus is not invisible at all. And it just so happens that I don't understand why, but for some reason, and this is only in Melbourne, actually, in Melbourne, Australia, so it's not the case for the Northern Hemisphere, but in Melbourne, Australia, Venus will not be invisible in August, which is bizarre, but that is a fact. The other thing that I wanted to mention as well, and I'll just show you actually, got to share my screen for that. Okay. So this is Placidus. This is the Rumen's program. Rumen Kolev is who I'm referring to, right? Some of you know who he is. Many of you probably don't. But he's basically, I don't even know how to describe him, but he's a bit of a genius, actually. He's how can I put it? Well, he's an astrologer, he's an astronomer. He's written programs and material for, the world of academia relative to astronomy programs and things like that. His mind is just boggling. He's obviously mind-boggling. His mind is mind-boggling. He's obviously, been an astrologer many times over, and I get the sense that he comes from, an era where he really actually was one of those astrologers back in the time that, observed the sky, right? We're so used to looking at this 3-dimensional chart, on the screen through our computers, and we're looking at this circle and we're looking at these symbols, and that's fine, and that's necessary as well, but we've lost touch with with the realness of things, you know, with going out there and looking at the sky, you know. One thing I never studied was astronomy, and I've only got a, you know, pretty basic sense of astronomy, and that's not my strongest point because it's not something that I studied. But I feel that having just a basic understanding of astronomy is very advantageous and hugely valuable when you are working with astrology, right? Period. Now, as I said, Venus goes retrograde. Well, actually, I want to bring up this chart. So this is just a chart I've saved on my screen here. This is the exact moment at Melbourne time, Australia, when Venus stations retrograde, the exact moment, literally to the minute. And this is just such a powerful omen because she's forming a yod with Pluto and Neptune. And she's forming a mystic rectangle with the Sun, Moon, Pluto, and Neptune. And so there's three very specific and distinctive things going on here. She's in a yod with Neptune and Pluto. She's in a mystic rectangle with Pluto, Neptune, Sun, and Moon. And she's at the exact midpoint of Sun and Moon, right? And so therefore she's at the far midpoint. The direct midpoint is this one here, where you can see that she's in the middle of the Sun and the Moon. That's what that's saying. She's at that midpoint. That's called the direct midpoint. And the far midpoint is the opposite position, which would be right here in between Neptune and Pluto. So, I mean, there's so many mystical musings about this energy pattern, and I'm still processing it myself, but I have no doubt that there's something, you know, for lack of a better word, very fated and extremely, extremely powerful about this station retrograde of Venus because of these two aspect patterns that she's forming. And the reason I think that is because Pluto and Neptune are the two furthest planets away from us, as it were, the two most outer planets, transcendental planets, right? And then the Sun and the Moon are the closest, most inner planets, closest planets to us. The Sun and the Moon are the fastest moving bodies out of all the planets, right? I mean, after the Sun comes Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc. But the point is, she's at the midpoint of the king, the queen, divine feminine, divine masculine, and she's at the opposite midpoint and forming a yod to the two most outer transcendental planets, energies, portals, Neptune and Pluto. And a yod is a very fated aspect pattern, and a mystic rectangle is just loaded with creative juice. So there's something so magnificent and dazzling and magical about this. That's one point. How do I get out of here now? Oops, there we go. Okay, so let's just bring up this for a moment. So this is the same chart, but with everything, well, all the bodies that I generally work with, planetary bodies, asteroids, nodes, etc. So think about this. Venus is about to go retrograde. It's a completion of a synodic cycle because her last retrograde cycle was in Capricorn in 2022 at 18 degrees of Capricorn. So that cycle, this retrograde cycle, that started in 2022, January of 2022, that was the beginning of that synodic cycle. So if we're looking at it from the point of view of a 19-month cycle, then we're working at it from that perspective. So we're thinking back to 2022 January 2022, Venus went retrograde at the 18th degree of Capricorn. And then after that star point, we had the ingress of the Libra Venus star point, which is a new birth, a new star on the wheel. So it's important to think about all these stars relative to star points, relative to where we are now. So you think about from a journey of planets going retrograde, or the Venus star point retrograde cycle, which is the morning star. We're thinking about, well, what happened in 2022? You know, where was that Venus star point in your chart? Do you have any planets at 18 Capricorn Cancer? You can include squares as well, which would be, of course, Libra and Aries, that square Capricorn Cancer. So you can look at squares as well. But I would start by looking at conjunctions and oppositions as being the most powerful for sure. So something is really, finishing at this point with that Capricorn retrograde cycle. Then a new birth occurred with the Libra and Venus star point, which was an evening star, which makes sense because Capricorn is a morning star, and the very next star point, which occurs 9 months later, has to be not a morning star, it has to be an evening star. So the ingression of the Venus Libran star was an evening star, right? So something was born at that time with the Libran evening star, and we are basically coming out of that phase now, out of the Libra Venus star point. So we're winding down with that energy, and we are stepping into a new retrograde cycle, right? Which is a morning star cycle, of course, and it's going to be in Leo. So you can you can look at your chart and just have a look at, as I said, do you have planets at 18 Capricorn Cancer or Aries Libra as well? Then, and have a look at what was happening for you at that time, because that's all winding down now, right? It's coming to some type of closure, as it were, and we're starting a new cycle, right, with the Leo Venus star point. Remember, there's 5 Venus star points on the pentagram, and we're starting a new synodic cycle of 19 months again. If we're looking at it just from the 9-month and 19-month level, we can go further, as I said, and look at it as the 4-year cycle, which is the midpoint between the 8-year cycle, or you can look at it as 8-year cycles. It's very complex, I know, and it can get very confusing. I know that as well. It takes a while to get your head around it, but very simply put, I would think about, at Capricorn house, what was happening at that time. A lot of things that would have been highlighted at that time obviously pertain to the Capricorn archetype and the Saturn archetypal signatures and energies as well. And, think about what was happening in the world collectively. There was so much oppression and so many laws and rules and regulations around, the jab, just to put it very simply, so that was a real harsh side, of that Saturn energy, the enforcement and so on and so forth. There was lots of other things, but that's like a big thing that was occurring at that time. But, just from your own personal perspective, it is about looking at the house that it's in, which it'll be in that house for such a long, long, long time. Really, most of your life, as it were. But anyway, that's another story. We'd need to go to unpacking other levels to talk about that, and I don't want to confuse people. So just think about 18 degrees of Cancer Capricorn, and just think about what has sort of completed around that cycle for you, around that Capricorn retrograde cycle, because we are now about to step into a new retrograde cycle, which is it's the end and the beginning of a new synodic cycle of Venus, which is her retrograde journey. And so in August, when she goes, when she forms the Venus star point, she's going to go retrograde on the 23rd of July, as you can see on the screen here. See how she's stationary? See the little S there? That means she's stationary, stationing to retrograde, right? So in August, when the star point occurs at 20 degrees of Leo, that's the birth of the new morning star, right? So that could be said to be a new 8-year cycle, if you want to look at it in terms of the 8-year period. However, you could look at it just from the point of view of a new 19-month cycle. You can look at it from the view of a new 9-month period. I guess just important to understand that whilst this is a new 8-year cycle or a new synodic cycle of Venus, then the next synodic cycle is going to occur. So next year we're going to have a Gemini Venus star point, and it's going to be an evening star. Let me just show you. So where are we? Here we are here. Okay, you can see there's the Venus star point that occurs 13th of August, okay? 20 degrees Leo. Means retrograde, which means she's a morning star. The next star point that's going to occur after that is going to be on 4th of June, 2024, okay, at 14 degrees Gemini, direct. The D means direct. So that's her direct movement, as it were. And so what begins here with 20 Leo, what begins with this retrograde cycle, kind of peaks next year at 4th of June in the Gemini direct Venus star point. And then after that, it'll be March 22nd, 2025, where we encounter Venus retrograde again, this time in Aries. So can you see what's the sequence? First of all, just understand the straightforward sequence of every 9 months, she changes from a direct cycle, evening star, to a morning star retrograde cycle. That's the sequence. That's why you see RD, RD, AD sequentially. It doesn't change ever. And see, all these stars, it's not like one is really beginning here and ending there. They're just kind of blending in and out, right? They're just blending in, blending out, blending in, blending out as they rotate and change from morning to evening. And so you can think of them a little bit like, well, I suppose you could say a little bit like eclipses as well, especially from the point of view of the energy of these star points can actually be activated, a couple of months before the actual date. It doesn't mean that because the Venus star point in Leo, which occurs 13th of August, I mean, technically that's the beginning, right? That's when she's reborn into a morning star. But the energy of this portal it's already been open for the last 2 months. So there's energies overlapping. We're coming out of we're finishing the Capricorn Venus star point retrograde cycle. We're finishing that synodic cycle because we're about to step into a new synodic cycle. And then in between those, we've got a Venus Libra star point. Venus. Libra and Venus star point in her direct movement. So in between, right? In between the Capricorn and the Leo one we're about to step into. So think about it like this. Something was highlighted or activated during the retrograde cycle in Capricorn. Part of that energy blended over into the Libran Venus star point, which is a new star on the wheel. So we've only just, we've seen, I think, some things that have been activated, certainly collectively, right? Because I think the whole, the whole, unfortunately, there's a lot of conflict around it, you know, around gender ideology, you know, I suppose we could say AI, you know, art, you know, all that sort of stuff. That's all coming out of this Libra and Venus star point. And we also just had the moon's nodes transition into Aries Libra, and so they are at 29 degrees Libra Aries, which is where the Libra and Venus star point is, right? So that you can see there's layers upon layers upon layers, but just to simplify it for the present moment, just know that you are stepping into a new 8-year cycle from the point of view of this Leo Venus star point. But it's not just strictly that, it's a blending of energies. You are leaving behind that Capricorn retrograde cycle. You are we are also leaving behind the Libran Venus star point, because we are literally, after the Libra Venus star point comes the Leo Venus star point, which is the one we are about to step into. So I know it sounds confusing, and it's sort of really hard to explain, you know, just in a few words. I'm trying my best to explain it as clearly as I can, because it is very complicated. But anyway, yeah, as I said, and that's right, that was the other thing that I wanted to mention today as well. So when Venus goes retrograde, we can associate that journey of Venus going retrograde as being very linked to the story of Inanna descending into the underworld, right? Let me just close that down. So hopefully you're all clear on that. Finishing something that was activated with the Capricorn star, that could have even been just you taking your own personal authority and making your own decisions about your perspective of reality. Just to put it very, very simply, could have been matters around that, where whilst there was this narrative playing out externally that was dictating certain regulations, laws, directions, and so forth, there was a choice that people made at that time, okay? There was a choice. And so choosing your own pathway with that was very much the Capricorn Venus star point, becoming your own authority, deciding for yourself what was right for you in amongst that turmoil that was going on at that time, for instance. And just simply looking at the overall structure of your life, essentially, because Capricorn is always connected to the backbone of our life, the structure of our life, right? The Libra and Venus star point, as I said, you know, a new star on the wheel. So very new energy for all of us, for the world, for us personally. But if you've got something at 29 Aries Libra, or 28 Aries Libra, around there, 28, 29, this Libra and Venus star point has activated something pretty, you know, pretty crucial in your life, right? That you've never had before, number one, because this is a new star point on the wheel, right? The last time we've had Scorpio on the wheel for the last, 120 years, something like that. So this Libra and Venus star point has taken over. But we're not done with Scorpio yet, because you can see here in 2026, that Libra and Venus star point comes back into Scorpio one more time. And we officially go back into the Libra and Venus star point here at 2030. So we've still got, there's still a lot of transformation that has to happen on this earth plane. A lot of leaving a lot of things behind, clearing out a lot of things. That's what this is, okay? But yeah, this Libra and Venus star point, I'd be interested to know if any of you have planets at 29, 28 Libra Aries, and have you seen anything or noticed anything, or have you consciously and purposely started something or created something in your life that this Venus star point has activated for you? Like for me, for example, this Libra and Venus star point is exactly opposite my own sun and my own Mercury. And, you know, I know what it is for me. It's a couple of different things, but I guess from an astrological perspective, it's the the classes that I'm about to offer starting in August, you see, because this Libra Venus star point, it just exactly opposite my Sun Mercury. It's just activated that Sun Mercury energy in my chart, right? So that's very interesting from seeing what that, you know, activated for me. It's bizarre because it wasn't, I didn't sit down and plan that I was going to start doing, you know, Zoom classes on next month, or like I've always known that I was going to do it at some point, because I used to teach astrology from home 25 years ago, right? It's not the first time I'm teaching, but I mean, boy, you know, the level that I'm at now versus 25 years ago is, you know, you can't even compare. So it's something so soulful and so special to me. And the Venus star point, you know, she shines when she hits something in your chart. She just, you know, she radiates. She, like, it's a magnetic energy that just radiates and, you know, infuses those planets with the power of, you know, Venus, right? The star point energy. So these star points are just so powerful. Okay. That's right. Just one more final thing and then I'll go. So I'll just stop sharing my screen for a moment. As I was beginning to say a few minutes ago, when Venus goes retrograde, we can definitely connect the myth of Inanna descending into the underworld to the journey, to the retrograde journey, because the retrograde journey is, it's an inner reflective journey, where we will reevaluate and reconsider all matters to do with love, creativity, what feels really, because this Venus star point is in Leo, it's the heart center. So it's an activation point of giving us the opportunity, gifting us the opportunity to really align with what we actually really love and what we actually really want to do that aligns with our heart. That's what the Venus star point speaks to. It's the alignment of spirit, source, energy through your heart manifested on the earth. So in Leo, that description is even more magnified because of what the archetype Leo speaks to, which is heart center, you know, really connecting with what's in your heart and following through on that, right? With courage. The lion is fearless. It's all about courage. So it is a retrograde journey. So we will, you know, reevaluate a lot of those elements in our life, depending, of course, as well, where this Venus star point in Leo lands in your chart. So which is your Leo house, for instance. And after she completes her retrograde journey, which on this occasion happens to be, I think, 43 days, it doesn't mean that you can't start something new in that cycle, by the way, because we can change our mind, or you know, change directions, or make a totally new decision about something through this retrograde cycle. In fact, it's not uncommon to do that at all. So it is a reevaluation. It could be a closure on certain things, and it's a brand new beginning as well. So it's got all of that contained within it. And because it is a retrograde cycle, which means going within, the Inanna story connects to that, journey of going within, because Inanna is the goddess who, descended into the underworld to meet her dark sister, Ereshkigal, who actually killed her in the end. But Venus was reborn. And as she goes into the underworld, she goes through the 7 gates, which ends up being reflected through the Venus lunation cycle, the Venus moon conjunctions that we see, in the space of around 9 months or whatever it is. That's another story. That's more like, that's a shamanic sort of journey that each person can work with relative to the lunar goddess and Venus, the goddess Venus. But it specifically does connect to those 7 gates of Inanna's entry descending into the underworld. But the descent of Inanna into the underworld is more connected to not the morning star, but actually the evening star, or when Venus is invisible, as she's coming out of the morning star phase to get to switch over to the evening star phase, it's on that, when she's on that side, as it were, that is her longest period of invisibility. It can be between 60 to 90 days where she's invisible. So that's a long time. Whereas on the side that she's at now, she will be invisible for about 10 to 12 days, something like that, or 8 to 12 days, something like that, right? It's a short period. Her longer period of invisibility is when she's on the other side. And because it's a long period, the significance of an evening star and everything that represents, it is that part of Venus's journey that corresponds more directly and specifically to the journey of Venus's descent into the underworld, Inanna's descent into the underworld. So when she's invisible, in other words, for that long duration, that's probably more a richer field, perhaps. It's certainly a longer period where you can really work with that shamanic Inanna underworld journey for your own personal growth and development, spiritual alignment, growth and development, because that journey is about shedding, right? That's really what it's about. It's about shedding layers, because as she goes through every single gate, 7 gates, she takes off one garment, one layer. And when she gets to the bottom, to the end of those gates, as it were, she's completely naked. That's just a metaphor and symbolism for each of us, to remind us of the shedding that we must also undergo at different times in our life, relative to attachments and imprints and conditioned imprints and so on and so forth, right? So anyway, when she's on the other side as an evening star phase and she disappears for that 60 to 90 day period, that is more apt for the Inanna descent shamanic journey. That's really what I'm trying to say. And this morning star phase, the one we're about to step into, it's like a mini shamanic journey, if you like. You can still apply that shamanic journey and explore the depth and conscious purpose and integration of this Venus Leo star point in your own life. It's just that it's a shorter period because she's invisible for a much shorter period, right? And as I said a little while ago, in Melbourne, it just so happens that in August, Venus is never invisible, oddly enough. Bizarre, bizarre, bizarre. And I had a look. I'll just show you this, and then I'll go. So I was looking at this is Rumen's program. As I said, it's called Placidus 7. It's a really complex program, but and I'm only just starting to get my head around it. As I've mentioned, a very kind, generous soul gifted this program to me. I'm, just eternally grateful to her for you know who you are, because I know you're watching, and very grateful to you. Anyway, here's what I want to show you. So let me just make me a bit smaller. Okay. Yeah, that'll do. See those things up there? High leg, L-Cockadon, L-Mutin. This is ancient astrological material, right? These points here are highly significant, right, for all of us. We all have a high leg, we all have an L-Cockadon, we all have an L-Mutin. You might have heard of the term L-Mutin. Many people probably haven't heard of high leg L-Cockadon. Now, Rumen calls the high leg God's light. The L-Cockadon is the angel. It's like the planet that protects you. And the L-Mutin is like the king, the superior king energy of your chart, as it were. Now, this chart is not of any individual in particular. It's just a chart. Actually, if you look here on the left, you can see it's 2024, May 14th. Now, this is very complex. But the only thing that I want to highlight for today, and by the way, for those of you doing my classes, we will use this program because this is a program that Rumen has written himself. And this program, as per what he says and what I believe to be correct as well, his program is the only one that really, well, maybe not the only one, but maybe it is. I don't know, because I haven't looked at every other program, but well, from the programs that I do know, first of all, they don't show you this spectacular feature of Venus appearing and disappearing. So, for example, see, this is the pentagram of this chart, for example, but this pentagram is not the Sun-Venus conjunction. This pentagram is Venus's invisibility and visibility. It's complicated. I'm not going to go there. If you want to do my classes and learn about this, you can, send me an email and you can learn about this with me. But the power of this program for me especially is that I'm able to see when Venus becomes visible and when Venus becomes visible at any point in time, whether it's present, past, or future. Now, next year, when Venus goes invisible, this is the day she goes invisible. It's actually May 14th, 2024. Now, this is the symbol for Venus down here. Now, this program's a bit hard to read, I must admit. I'm still getting my head around it. There are all these tabs down here where you can unhighlight things, right? So if you look at the background, can you see the light blue pictures? That's actually the constellations, which is magnificent. And then all these gray words, these are all the stars, right? So you can see, if this was your chart, you would see where all the stars are relative to, the houses in your chart, the planets in your chart, and so forth. It's brilliant for all those reasons. Now, this is the symbol of Venus all the way down here in gray, if you can see that. And there's a letter X there as well. Now, the way he's designed this program is that when any planet becomes invisible, it changes color, it changes to gray, right? That's how we know that Venus has become invisible. So she'll be invisible from the 14th of May. And what I did was, there's a feature over here to the left where you can I do that, or why is it not? Okay, there we go. So if I want to animate this chart, whether I want to go backwards or whether I want to go forwards, you can do either or, but I'll just show you quickly. So if we just go forward one day, I'll just click that arrow, and there it's moved the chart, 24 hours later, right? 15th of May. We started on the 14th. Now you can go faster than that by hitting the 2 arrows, and when you click that, it just rotates on its own. So see what's happening here. This is a rotation. It's just going day by day by day. And what you can do is, which is what I did, see how Venus is still gray. Now we're at the 9th, 10th, 12th June, etc., etc. So basically, this is Venus invisible during this whole time. And I'll just stop it for now. It basically, she stays invisible until around the 3rd of July next year. So from 14th of May to around the 3rd of July next year is her period of invisibility. That's when she's evening star phase. That period of invisibility is highly significant for collective earthly matters and for us in our own personal life. So these are some of the things that I'll be talking about and teaching in my classes as well, if you are interested in any of that. Okay, I think that's kind of what I wanted to cover for today. I'll be talking about the the Leo Venus star point with Ariel Gutman next month. So I think we're set to meet like a day or two before the Venus star point actually happens. That's just the date she had available and so on and so forth. And I couldn't wait until then before I spoke about this Venus star point, because I've got my own thoughts and material to bring to this, which, as you can see, I have. And this is now my 3rd video on Venus in Leo. And as I said in my last one, Venus in Leo is certainly getting all the attention. There's quite a few astrologers doing part 1, part 2, part 3, etc. And, Venus in Leo in Babylonian astrology is considered to be a very, very powerful place for Venus. Very powerful. It's kind of like an exaltation position for Venus. So this Leo Venus star point is something to really, really consciously align with your heart to manifest what you really love and want to do. Don't miss this opportunity to integrate with this energy, consciously work with it and integrate it, communicate to the goddess, Venus, speak to her. She's listening, right? She knows what's in your heart anyway, but you can speak to her about it as well. There's lots of different rituals and practices you can do, but whether you're not, let's just say you're not into any of that, you don't have to be. So you don't even have to do that. I mean, it's good for you if you do, because part of that is also about showing gratitude, right? Gratitude and appreciation. Appreciation is actually a word that connects to Venus. When you appreciate something or someone, that's a Venusian quality or characteristic. And the universe really does love the hearts that are able to show gratitude and appreciation. And that's not just a mental, personal perspective. I feel that to be a real truth from a cosmic, spiritual level. So this is the chance to really, dive deep in our heart and merge with and integrate with and align with what we really, really love. And, Venus will bestow her gifts upon you. Now, it is a morning star, so it is about, you know, taking action. It is about co-creating on that external level, right? It's a very powerful, energetic, heart energy, lion energy, courageous energy portal, right? And then we've got the Lion's Gate coming up on the 8th of the 8th as well, which is just a few days before the Venus star point. So there's so much magnificence with these portals, and we can really utilize this energy to really create what we love, align with what we really love, and or people will, you know, perhaps tune into this energy in a really classical, dramatic Leo way. You know, there'll be lots of drama on the planet. Leo is a sign of drama, literally. So there will be lots of drama, and you can choose to pay attention to that, or you can choose to pay attention to what's in your heart and what you are here to do and what you really love and what you really want to do. So I'll see you guys soon. Email me if you want to join my classes. You'll love them. They'll be amazing. Bye for now.